There is something deeply satisfying about buying a new device. The weight of it, the unboxing, the way it syncs effortlessly with everything you already own, your photos, your music, your entire digital life in seconds. For a moment, it genuinely feels like the future, and the companies selling it to you are not wrong to promise that. The convenience is real, the seamlessness is real, the productivity gains are real. Apple, Google, Microsoft, Adobe, these are not villains. They built tools that reshaped how humanity works, creates, and connects. Billions of people chose these ecosystems freely, rationally, and with good reason. But here is what the unboxing video never shows you. The moment you clicked agree on that end-user license agreement, you did not buy a product. You purchased a revocable license to access one. And the system was not designed to give you ownership. It was designed structurally deliberately at the architecture level to make sure you never have it. Because ownership is a one-time transaction, dependency is forever, and in 2026 the most valuable commodity on Earth is not your data. It is your inability to leave. Think about what cloud integration actually does for your life. Your iPhone photo library, backed up automatically. Your work documents, accessible from any device on the planet. Your music, your podcasts, your notes, your passwords, your calendar. All of it synchronized, searchable, and available the instant you need it. This is not a trick. This is genuinely extraordinary. A knowledge worker in 2026 carries more computing power in their pocket than NASA used to land humans on the moon. The cloud did not just improve productivity, it restructured what productivity even means. Remote work, global collaboration, instant file sharing, and real-time co-editing. None of it exists without the infrastructure these companies built and continues to maintain at enormous cost. So when a company says, trust us with your data, trust us with your workflow, trust us with your creative library, they are not making an empty promise. They are offering something real, tested, and increasingly indispensable. That is exactly what makes the trap so elegant. Because the system is not seductive despite being useful. It is seductive because it is useful. Every genuine benefit adds another invisible link to the chain. Every convenience you accept makes the next one easier to accept. And before long, migration is not just technically difficult, it is psychologically unthinkable. The perfect product does not lock the door, it makes you forget the door exists. In 1990, you bought Microsoft Word. One box, one disk, one payment. That copy of Word was yours. Legally, permanently, unconditionally yours. You could use it for 20 years if you wanted to. Nobody could take it away. In 2011, Adobe introduced the Creative Cloud. Within 3 years, it discontinued perpetual licenses entirely. Designers who had spent careers mastering Photoshop now had a choice. Pay monthly or lose access to their own work files. That was not an upgrade. That was a business model revolution disguised as one. Today, Microsoft 365 costs consumers up to $100 per year. Adobe Creative Cloud costs up to $660 per year. Both are products that once sold for a single price. The software did not change. The relationship did. This is rent-seeking in its purest modern form. Companies no longer need to build a better product to earn more revenue. They simply need to restructure the payment architecture, convert a one-time sale into a recurring obligation, and revenue scales indefinitely without the cost of innovation. In 2023, the global software-as-a-service market exceeded $195 billion. By 2026, it is projected to surpass $300 billion. That is not market growth. That is a systematic transfer of purchasing power from consumers to corporations, executed one subscription renewal at a time. You did not get more software. You got less ownership for more money, delivered on an infinite payment schedule with no exit clause. In 2023, Sonos released a software update for owners of the original Sonos Play 5 and other legacy devices. That update was not an improvement. It was a death sentence. Devices that cost between $300 and $700 each were rendered functionally obsolete, not because the hardware had failed, not because the speakers had worn out, but because Sonos decided that supporting older firmware was no longer commercially convenient. This is not an isolated incident. It is a pattern. Revolve was a smart home hub that sold for $300. In 2016, Google acquired its parent company and shut down the service entirely. Every single Revolver device became a paperweight. Not a discounted paperweight, not a replaced one, just plastic, circuit boards, and wasted money. Logitech Harmony, Insteon, Wink. Smart home platforms with millions of combined users, all discontinued or degraded without meaningful recourse for customers who had built their homes around them. The hardware is not the product. The server connection is the product. And when the server goes dark, your expensive device goes with it. This is the brick reality. You do not own a smart speaker. You own a conditional speaker. You own a speaker that works as long as the company that sold it to you remains solvent, interested, and willing to maintain the infrastructure you depend on. The moment those conditions change, your property stops being property. In 2015, a Nebraska farmer named Kevin Kenny tried to fix his own tractor. It was a machine he'd purchased outright, a John Deere model worth well over $150,000. The repair was straightforward, but when he attempted it, the tractor refused. Its onboard diagnostic software was locked behind proprietary firmware, legally protected under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. To perform basic maintenance on equipment he owned, he was required to pay a John Deere authorized dealer, drive the tractor to an approved location, and wait. During harvest season, when every hour of downtime translates directly to crop loss. John Deere's position was unambiguous. Farmers, they argued in legal filings, do not own their tractors. They own an implied license to operate them. This case became the catalyst for the modern right-to-repair movement, a legislative battle that has now reached the legislatures of more than 40 US states. In 2023, Colorado became the first state to pass agricultural repair legislation. In 2024, the EU mandated repairability standards for a range of electronic devices. But the deeper story is not about tractors. It is about who controls the tools of production. When a farmer cannot repair the machine that feeds their family, and a designer cannot open their own files without a monthly subscription, and a homeowner cannot fix their own smart thermostat, the definition of ownership itself has been quietly, legally, and systematically hollowed out. The John Deere dilemma was not an anomaly. It was the preview. In 2023, Microsoft shut down its movies and TV storefront. Customers who had purchased films through the platform received a notification that their purchased content would be transferred to another service. But not every title made the transition. Some purchases simply disappeared. No refund, no replacement, just a library, reduced. This happens with startling regularity. When Disney acquired 21st Century Fox, licensing agreements shifted. Titles vanished from streaming platforms mid-subscription. When Sony shut down its PlayStation Store for older consoles, decades of purchased digital games became inaccessible. When Amazon renegotiated its Audible contracts, audiobooks that customers had paid for were quietly delisted. The language of the purchase was never ownership. Buried in the terms of service, every digital media transaction is structured as a license. You paid for permission to access a file stored on someone else's server, for as long as that server exists, as long as that company exists, and as long as the licensing agreement underpinning that file remains intact. None of those conditions is guaranteed. None of them is even promised. A physical book survives a bankruptcy. A DVD survives a corporate acquisition. A downloaded MP3 survives a server shutdown. But a digital purchase tied to a platform account survives only as long as the platform decides it should. Your library is not yours. It is a curated selection of what you are currently permitted to remember you bought. Here is where the story gets genuinely uncomfortable. The reason you stay inside the Apple ecosystem is not entirely because you love Apple. It is because leaving Apple is expensive, disorienting, and quietly terrifying. Your iMessage history, your AirDrop habits, your Apple Watch, which becomes a significantly less functional device the moment it is paired with an Android phone. Your iCloud photo library, 12 years of memories, is stored in a proprietary format that requires deliberate time-consuming effort to migrate. This is not accidental friction. It is engineered friction. A 2022 analysis by the technology research firm Sensor Tower estimated that switching from an iPhone to an Android device costs the average user between $200 and $500 in repurchased apps, incompatible accessories, and productivity losses. That figure does not include the psychological cost, the learning curve, the broken workflows, or the reconnection anxiety. Google builds the same walls with different materials. Your search history, your Maps data, your Gmail threads, your Drive documents, your YouTube subscriptions, all of it is deeply, deliberately integrated. Leaving Google does not feel like cancelling a service. It feels like dismantling a part of your daily identity. The ecosystem was never just a product bundle. It was a switching cost manufactured in advance, calibrated precisely to the threshold where escape becomes more painful than compliance. The prison has no bars. The prison is comfort itself. In 2010, the average American household spent approximately $31 per month on subscription services. Gym membership, maybe a Netflix DVD plan, perhaps a magazine or two. In 2026, that figure has crossed $350 per month, according to data from C+R Research. That is an increase of more than 1,000% in 15 years. And critically, most households underestimate their own subscription spending by nearly 40%, because the charges are small, recurring, and deliberately designed to feel invisible. Think through your own stack. Streaming video across 2 or 3 platforms, music, cloud storage, a password manager, antivirus software, a productivity suite, a fitness app, a news subscription, a creative tool, a gaming service. Individually, none of them feel significant. $9.99 here, $14.99 there, $6.99 for the one you keep meaning to cancel. Collectively, they represent a structural shift in how wealth moves. An entire generation is now paying indefinitely for access to things a previous generation paid for once. The asset never transfers, the bill never ends, and the companies on the receiving end of that arrangement are booking the most predictable, highest margin revenue in the history of commerce. Subscription creep is not a lifestyle problem. It is a generational wealth transfer, operating one automatic renewal at a time, invisible, relentless, and almost perfectly frictionless by design. Pull back from the individual transaction and look at the architecture. In 2026, 5 companies, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta, collectively control the operating systems, cloud infrastructure, digital storefronts, and communication platforms used by more than 5 billion people. Not 5 billion customers, 5 billion dependents. This is not a conspiracy. It is the logical endpoint of a system that rewards lock-in over liberation, recurring revenue over one-time value, and control over choice. The World Economic Forum's 2030 vision famously included the phrase, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." Whatever its original intent, that line has become a cultural flashpoint precisely because it describes a trajectory that feels, to many people, already underway. Not through legislation, not through force, through convenience, normalized gradually over decades, until the alternative became unimaginable. When critical infrastructure, from farm equipment to creative software to medical devices, requires a corporate permission slip to function, the question of ownership stops being philosophical. It becomes a question of power. Who controls your tools controls your capacity to produce. Who controls your library controls what you can access. Who controls your platform controls what you can say. The modern digital economy was not built to exploit you, but it was built in a way where your dependency is the product, and dependency, unlike a laptop or a song, has no expiration date. So here is the truth stated plainly without softening. You are not a customer, you are a subscriber. There is a meaningful difference, and the difference compounds over a lifetime. A customer makes a purchase and owns the result. A subscriber makes a payment and rents access until the next payment is due. The modern tech economy has systematically converted one into the other, and it has done so with your full, enthusiastic, completely rational consent. Because the offer was good, because the convenience was real, because saying yes was always easier than reading the fine print. But awareness changes the calculation. The right to repair movement is winning legislative battles. Open source alternatives to proprietary software exist and are improving. Physical media, vinyl, Blu-ray, and printed books is experiencing a genuine cultural resurgence among people who have decided that some things are worth owning permanently. These are not nostalgic gestures. They're acts of deliberate sovereignty. You will not dismantle the subscription economy, but you can be intentional about where you stand inside it. You can know what you own versus what you rent. You can value the distinction. You can build a digital life where at least some of what matters to you cannot be revoked by a quarterly earnings call. Convenience has a price. You have been paying for it for years. The only question left is whether you are paying for it consciously. If this video made you think differently about something you purchased this week, something you assumed you owned, drop a comment below with one word, just one word, tenant. That word tells me this conversation is worth continuing. And if enough of you say it, the next video goes deeper. The specific tools, the legal frameworks, and the practical strategies for reclaiming ownership in a system designed to prevent it. Share this with someone who just bought a new device and is still in the unboxing high. They need to see it before they click agree. Subscribe if you want the kind of content that makes you slightly uncomfortable and significantly sharper. That is the only kind I make. The next video is already in production. You will not want to miss it.